educational policy was simply to increase economic and industrial production while also taking care to indoctrinate children with Bolshevik ideology. Indoctrination began at school, where children were encouraged to join the Young Pioneers. As the participants got older, they were encouraged to join the Communist Union of Youth, which was known as Komsomol. This allowed them to join youth clubs, sports, and leisure centers, and to go to summer camps. Stalin sought to increase production by schooling children in new scientific and engineering developments to increase their value to the industry. Stalin emphasized vocational training and made school compulsory to combat illiteracy to improve efficiency in the workplace. However, some argue that the real goal of promoting literacy was so that as many people as possible could understand propaganda messages.
Soviet press referred to Stalin as the great, beloved, bold, and wise, which portrayed him as a caring yet strong father figure, with the Soviet population being his children. The phrase, "Thank you, dear comrade Stalin, for a happy childhood," appeared above doorways at nurseries, orphanages, and schools. Children also chanted this slogan at festivals. The image of Stalin as a father was one way in which the Soviet propagandists aimed to incorporate traditional religious symbols and language into the cult of personality. The title, Father, now first and foremost belonged to Stalin as opposed to the Russian Orthodox priests. The cult of personality also adopted the Christian traditions of procession and devotion to icons, the use of Stalinist parades and statues. In doing this, Stalin hoped to divert attention to himself away from the church.
Children in the Soviet Union held a special place in the hearts of citizens and the Bolshevik Party. They represented not only the innocence of youth, but also the promise of the socialist future. In order for the international Marxist revolution to succeed, the youth had to be treated well and educated politically. Bolshevik authorities took many routes to achieve this goal. Primarily, the Bolshevik Party focused a cult of childhood, much like Stalin's cult of personality, which idealized Soviet childhood. The Bolshevik Party formalized this cult through youth organizations such as the Komsomol, Young Pioneers, and Little Octoberists. Always be ready was the motto of the Young Pioneers. From 1922 to 1990, generations of 10 to 15-year-old children in the Soviet Union learned, exercised, explored, and extolled the virtues of their society through the pioneers. Instilling patriotism and ideological education was part of the reason behind the creation of the pioneers. The motto, "Be prepared," stayed. This cult relied on a juxtaposition between true Bolshevik children and everyone else. The force of this industrialization was seen most strongly in the formative years of the Soviet Union and was perfected under Stalin.
Izvestia is Russian for news, and the Izvestia was a historically important Russian daily newspaper published in Moscow. The paper was published by the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet of the USSR and was the official national publication of the Soviet government until 1991. The newspaper was founded in March 1917 in Petrograd, which is now St. Petersburg, as an origin of the Petrograd Soviet of Workers' and Soldiers' Deputies. After the October Revolution that year, control of the Izvestia passed from the Mensheviks and the Socialist Revolutionaries into the hands of the Bolsheviks, and the paper's main offices were moved to Moscow. Izvestia grew rapidly to a circulation of 354,000 in 1924 and 1,500,000 by 1932. Restrictions during World War II under Joseph Stalin slowed its growth, but under the editorship of Nikita Khrushchev's son-in-law, Alexei
Please keep going. Keep going.
But under the editorship of Nikita Khrushchev's son-in-law, Izvestia was transformed into a lively, readable daily with the introduction of more photographs, bigger headlines, shorter, more interesting articles, and a generally high standard of design. Izvestia remained an instrument of the state for informing and educating the people in the light of the Soviet government policies.
Stalin's use of media was persuasive and influential. He controlled the newspapers and only had them portray good things about him, leaving the people completely oblivious to all the bad things he was doing. This allowed him to continue with the bad things without a rebellious nation. Stalin had all the history books rewritten, and all information on the old communists was erased, and the new ideas of Stalin were written in. This allowed him to have control over the youth of Russia. Stalin used pamphlets, speeches, and rallies to convince younger people to follow him. Writers and artists were a danger to Stalin, and so they were forced to produce work that suited Stalin. They were not allowed to show anything that would cause citizens to question Stalin's ways. Enemies of the People was a poster explaining that some of the people were mean and wanted to disturb the peace and happiness in Russia. So if you saw someone being arrested, you shouldn't be scared because they were bad people who needed to be punished.